The blue glow of Earth filled the viewing window as Commander Jake Morrison floated through the corridors of Defense Station Olympus. His boots made soft magnetic clicks against the metal floor with each step. The station had been his home for 3 years now, spinning slowly in orbit above the Pacific Ocean. Most days were quiet up here, monitoring space traffic and watching for asteroids that might threaten the planet below. Jake pushed himself through the doorway into the communications center where Lisa Barnes sat hunched over her console. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls as waves of static filled her headphones. Lisa had been picking up strange signals all week, fragments of transmissions from deep space that made no sense. The patterns were too organized to be natural phenomena, but too alien to be human broadcasts. "Still chasing ghosts out there?" Jake asked as he drifted up behind her chair. Lisa pulled off her headphones and turned around. Her face was pale, and her eyes looked tired from hours of concentration. "These aren't ghosts, Jake. Something big is happening out there, and we're only catching pieces of it. The signals are using quantum encryption methods that shouldn't exist yet." She tapped her screen, and a cascade of green numbers flowed down the display. "Look at this pattern. It's repeating every 47 minutes across multiple frequencies. Someone is broadcasting on a schedule, and they're using technology that makes our best systems look like tin cans connected by string." Jake frowned as he studied the data. His military training had taught him to recognize threats, and this felt like one even though he couldn't explain why. "Any idea where it's coming from?" "That's the strange part. The signals seem to originate from the Zarian system, about 30 light-years from here. But according to our deep space surveys, that system is supposed to be empty except for a few rocky planets." Before Jake could respond, the console erupted in a shower of green light. Every screen in the communications center began displaying the same symbol, a complex geometric pattern that hurt to look at directly. Lisa's hands flew over her controls as she tried to trace the signal's origin. "Jake, this is it. This is the source transmission, and it's coming through clear as daylight. Someone wants us to hear this." The symbol faded and was replaced by what could only be described as an alien conference room. Beings of various species sat around a circular table that seemed to be made of living crystal. The camera view swept across creatures that looked like walking trees, others resembling giant insects, and some that defied any earthly comparison. At the head of the table stood a being that appeared to be made of shifting purple energy contained within a vaguely humanoid form. When it spoke, subtitles appeared at the bottom of the screen in perfect English. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, we gather today to address the final phase of the human problem. For too long, we have tolerated this species' aggressive expansion into territories they have no right to claim." Jake felt his blood turn cold. The human problem. They were talking about his species like it was some kind of disease that needed to be cured. The purple being gestured, and new images appeared in the air above the table. Jake recognized some of them immediately. Human colonies on distant worlds, mining operations in asteroid belts, exploration ships pushing ever further into unknown space. But the way the images were presented made everything look sinister and threatening. Observe their pattern of behavior. Wherever humans establish presence, conflict follows. They resist our taxation policies, ignore our territorial boundaries, and worst of all, they refuse to submit to proper behavioral conditioning. A creature that looked like a massive praying mantis clicked its mandibles together before speaking. The humans display an unprecedented level of what their own scientists call stubbornness. "Our standard pacification protocols have proven completely ineffective against their psychology." More images flashed across the display, showing human traders arguing with alien officials, human colonists fighting off raiders, and human explorers planting flags on worlds that other species claimed as their own. To Jake, these looked like normal defensive actions and expressions of independence. To the Council, they apparently represented an existential threat. Lisa was recording everything while simultaneously running translation algorithms to make sure they weren't missing any nuances in the alien languages. Her equipment was working overtime to process signal patterns that were far more advanced than anything in Earth's databases. the purple being raised what might have been an arm, and the other creatures fell silent. After extensive deliberation, this council has reached a unanimous decision. Humanity will undergo biological pacification within 30 solar cycles. The treatment will preserve their useful physical capabilities while eliminating their capacity for independent thought and aggressive behavior. Jake grabbed the edge of Lisa's chair to steady himself. Biological pacification. They were planning to lobotomize the entire human race and turn them into slaves. A new speaker emerged from the group. This one resembling a cross between a jellyfish and a spider. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. The deployment. Fleet is already en route to the Sol system. They carry sufficient quantities of the neurological modification virus to treat every human on Earth and in the outer colonies. The process is irreversible and will take effect within hours of atmospheric release. The image shifted to show a star map with a red line tracing a path from some distant location straight to Earth. Numbers at the bottom of the screen showed the fleet's estimated arrival time, 29 days, 14 hours, 37 minutes. Lisa's hands were shaking as she checked and double-checked her instruments. Jake, this is real. The transmission is coming from exactly where our deep space probes detected those artificial structures 5 years ago. The ones that Central Command classified and told us to forget about. The purple being was speaking again. Some may question the necessity of this action, but remember that humans are the only species to achieve spaceflight through warfare rather than peaceful development. They are the only species to resist Council authority when first contacted. They are the only species that grow stronger when faced with adversity rather than submitting to proper guidance. Jake realized with growing horror that the aliens actually feared humanity. Not because humans were particularly advanced or powerful, but because they were unpredictable and refused to be controlled. Every other species in the galaxy had apparently been domesticated into compliance over generations of alien management. The transmission continued for another hour, showing detailed plans for the biological weapons deployment and the subsequent management of a pacified human population. The aliens discussed humans like livestock, debating the best ways to utilize human physical capabilities while ensuring complete psychological submission. When the signal finally ended, Jake and Lisa sat in stunned silence. The communications center felt cold despite the heating systems running at full capacity. Earth looked the same through the viewing window, blue and peaceful and completely unaware that its doom was already traveling through space toward them. Jake's training kicked in, and he reached for the emergency communication system. Admiral Susan Blake needed to know about this immediately. Every human in the solar system needed to know that they had less than 30 days to prepare for a war they never knew was coming. As he began composing the most important message in human history, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the aliens had made a serious mistake. They feared human unpredictability and independence, so their solution was to threaten humanity with extinction. If they really understood humans at all, they would know that nothing made humans more dangerous than being cornered with nothing left to lose. The emergency alert klaxons wailed through the Pentagon's underground command center as President Daniel Hayes rushed down the reinforced corridors. His security detail struggled to keep pace as he moved with purpose toward the crisis room where America's top military leaders were already gathering. The message from Defense Station Olympus had reached Earth 3 hours ago, and every government on the planet was now in full emergency mode. Admiral Susan Blake stood at the head of the massive holographic display table when the president entered. Her weathered face showed no emotion, but her eyes carried the weight of humanity's survival. Around the table sat the Joint Chiefs of Staff, each representing a branch of Earth's military that was about to face its greatest test. "Show me what we're dealing with," President Hayes said as he took his seat. "Admiral." Blake gestured, and the display showed a three-dimensional map of the solar system with a red arrow pointing directly at Earth. "Mr. President, we have 28 days before an alien fleet arrives with the intention of releasing a biological weapon that will lobotomize every human being alive. They plan to turn us into mindless workers for their galactic empire. General Frank Lopez leaned forward in his chair. Our intelligence estimates suggest we're facing a force of at least 200 ships carrying technology that's centuries ahead of anything we've publicly acknowledged having. President Hayes felt his stomach drop. Publicly acknowledged. What? Aren't you telling me, Admiral? Blake exchanged glances with the other officers before touching another control. The display changed to show a massive underground facility carved into the side of a mountain. Mr. President, I need to brief you on Project Valkyrie. This program has been developing weapons and defenses specifically designed to counter alien technology for the past 15 years. The display showed corridors filled with scientists working on devices that looked nothing like conventional human technology. Dr. Rachel Kim appeared on screen, her lab coat splattered with unusual stains as she explained something to a group of engineers. Next to her, Tony Rodriguez was assembling what looked like a weapon that belonged in a science fiction movie. We've been reverse engineering captured alien technology since our first contact incidents in the outer colonies. Most of those encounters were covered up to prevent panic. But we learned valuable lessons from each one, Blake continued. President Hayes stared at the images. How much of this technology do we actually have operational? Dr. Kim's voice came through the speakers as the display showed her current work. Mr. President, we have neural scramblers that can disrupt alien communication frequencies, quantum disruptors that can tear apart their hull materials, and most importantly, we've discovered why the aliens consider humans to be a problem species. The screen changed to show genetic analysis charts that meant nothing to the president but everything to the scientists studying them. Dr. Kim appeared again, this time speaking directly to the camera. Humans possess a unique genetic trait that makes us immune to the psychological conditioning that keeps other species compliant. Every other intelligent species in the galaxy has been bred or modified to be naturally submissive to authority. We're the only ones who instinctively resist, control, and fight back when threatened. Meanwhile, thousands of miles above Earth's surface, Captain Sam Turner received an encrypted message aboard his mining vessel Hercules. The message was brief but carried the authority of Earth Fleet Command. Rally all human ships in the outer colonies, return to Sol immediately, prepare for total war. Sam had been working the asteroid belts beyond Mars for 5 years, leading a crew of rough miners who had chosen the dangerous life of deep space extraction over the safety of planetary existence. These were people who understood that survival meant being willing to fight. For what was yours, he activated the ship's communication system and began broadcasting on the emergency frequency used by human vessels throughout the solar system. This is Captain Turner aboard the Hercules. All human ships are ordered to return to Earth immediately. We have a fight coming and every ship will be needed. The response was immediate. Mining vessels, cargo haulers, exploration ships, and private transports began acknowledging the order and plotting courses back toward Earth. These weren't military vessels, but they were crewed by humans who had chosen to live on the frontier, where weakness meant death. Back on Earth, the news of the alien threat spread through the military command structure like wildfire. In Detroit, factory worker Pete Johnson was welding steel plates when his supervisor approached with news that would change everything. The government was converting all manufacturing facilities to military production, and every able-bodied person was being asked to volunteer for defense training. Pete set down his welding torch and looked around the factory floor. These were people who built things with their hands, who understood that sometimes you had to destroy in order to create. Within hours, the factory had become a training center where workers learned to assemble weapons and organize civilian defense groups. In Ohio, elementary school teacher Mary Sullivan was explaining fractions to her third-grade class when the emergency broadcast interrupted regular programming. The announcement was carefully worded to avoid panic, but Mary understood the implications immediately. She began teaching her students emergency protocols disguised as games, knowing that children who could follow instructions quickly might be the ones who survived. Retired Marine Danny Walsh was chopping firewood outside his cabin in the Montana wilderness when his old satellite phone rang. The voice on the other end belonged to someone he hadn't heard from in 20 years, but the message was clear: his country needed him again. Danny set down his axe and walked into his cabin where military equipment had been waiting in storage. For decades, Dr. Kim's team worked around the clock in their underground laboratory, converting theoretical weapons into practical tools of war. The neural scramblers could be mounted on spacecraft to disrupt alien communication networks. The quantum disruptors could be loaded into missiles that would tear enemy ships apart at the molecular level. But their most important discovery was that human genetics made them naturally resistant to the aliens' biological weapons. Tony Rodriguez emerged from his workshop carrying a device that looked like a cross between a radio and a weapon. This can broadcast on alien communication frequencies and overload their nervous systems. We can turn their own technology against them. The transformation of human society was swift and total. Factory workers became weapons manufacturers. Teachers became tactical instructors. Miners became the backbone of a civilian fleet that would support the military in ways the aliens could never anticipate. Admiral Blake stood before the massive display showing Earth's defensive preparations. Ships were moving into position throughout the solar system. Weapons that had existed only in secret laboratories were being mass-produced in facilities that had been building cars and computers just days before. The aliens expect to find a primitive species with limited defensive capabilities. Instead, they're going to discover that threatening humanity's existence was the worst mistake they could possibly make, she said to her assembled staff. President Hayes watched the preparations and felt something he hadn't expected: pride. In the face of extinction, humanity wasn't panicking or surrendering. They were preparing to fight with a determination that would either save their species or ensure that their enemies paid a terrible price for victory. Fleet Commander Turvash stood on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Dominion as the alien armada dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Behind him stretched a formation of 200 ships representing the combined military might of 17 different species. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level a planet and biological weapons that could pacify an entire star system. The fleet commander studied the tactical display showing the primitive solar system ahead. According to Council intelligence, humans were a recently spacefaring species with crude chemical rockets and basic energy weapons. Their largest settlements were concentrated on a single planet with small outposts scattered across a few nearby worlds. The mission should be simple: orbital bombardment followed by atmospheric deployment of the pacification virus. Begin long-range scanning, Turvash ordered his sensor officer, a crystalline being whose body refracted light in shifting patterns. The sensor readings that came back made no sense. Where the intelligence reports indicated empty space, the scanners were detecting massive artificial structures hidden throughout the asteroid belt. Energy signatures suggested weapons, platforms that shouldn't exist on a world that had only achieved spaceflight within the last century. Commander, we're detecting at least 50 installations between Mars and Jupiter. The energy output from these structures exceeds anything in our database for a primitive species, the sensor officer reported, his crystalline form flickering. With confusion, Turvash dismissed the readings as equipment malfunction. The Council's intelligence was flawless and based on direct observation of human capabilities. These readings had to be caused by solar interference or asteroid mining equipment. That was being misidentified by their scanners. Deploy advanced scouts to confirm system defenses. All ships maintain formation and prepare for standard pacification protocols, he commanded. The first wave of alien scout ships moved deeper into the solar system, their sleek forms cutting through space toward the inner planets. They were state-of-the-art vessels designed to gather intelligence while remaining undetected by primitive sensor systems. Captain Lisa Shun watched from her command station on Luna base as the alien scouts approached. The hidden weapons platforms throughout the asteroid belt had been tracking the invaders since they first appeared on long-range sensors. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans had really been building in the darkness between worlds. Oh. Station's report ready, her tactical officer announced. Lisa smiled grimly as she opened a communication. channel to every human ship and station in the solar system. This is Luna Base to all units. The aliens have come to make us slaves. Show them what we think of that idea. The asteroid belt erupted in weapon fire as dozens of hidden platforms revealed themselves. Quantum disruptor beams lanced out across millions of miles to strike the alien scouts with energies that tore their molecular structure apart. The advanced alien vessels simply ceased to exist as their exotic matter hulls collapsed into subatomic particles. On Mars, Colonel Rick Barnes commanded the orbital defense fortress that had been disguised as a mining station for over a decade. His weapons were different from the asteroid platforms, designed to deliver massive kinetic strikes that could shatter capital ships. As the alien fleet moved closer, he prepared to demonstrate human engineering at its most destructive. The alien scouts that survived the initial barrage sent desperate transmissions back to the main fleet. The reports made no sense to Turvash as he listened to descriptions of weapons that violated every principle of civilized warfare. These primitive humans were using technologies that even the Council considered too dangerous for practical application. Impossible. Our intelligence indicates they barely understand basic fusion technology, he muttered as more scout ships disappeared from his tactical display. Admiral Susan Blake stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiance as the human fleet emerged from behind Jupiter's moons. These weren't the crude chemical rockets the aliens expected to face. Human shipbuilding had advanced in secret, incorporating alien technology, with human innovation to create vessels that moved faster and hit harder than anything in the galaxy. The human fleet spread out in a formation that would have been suicide for any civilized species. Instead of maintaining safe distances and following established tactical doctrine, the human ships moved to close range where their weapons would have maximum effect. They fought like they had nothing to lose because they understood exactly what defeat meant. Turvash watched in growing horror as his organized formation was torn apart by human tactics that no rational species would employ. Human ships rammed alien vessels at high speed, detonating their own reactors to take out enemy cruisers. Civilian vessels loaded with mining explosives accelerated directly at alien capital ships in suicide. Attacks that should have been prevented by basic survival instincts. On Earth, the population responded to the orbital battle with terrifying efficiency. Construction worker Mike Davis led teams that converted automobile factories into missile production facilities within hours. The assembly lines that had been building cars that morning were producing ship-killer weapons by afternoon. Programmer Katie Thompson sat in a basement command center, surrounded by computer screens as she led cyber attacks against the alien fleet. Human computer viruses designed specifically to target alien software systems spread through the enemy communication networks like digital wildfire. Alien ships began losing coordination as their computers crashed and their targeting systems failed. The battle that the Council expected to last minutes stretched into hours as human resistance proved far more effective than anyone had predicted. Turvash found himself commanding a retreating fleet against an enemy that shouldn't have existed according to every piece of intelligence the Council possessed. Dr. Rachel Kim watched the battle from her underground laboratory while her weapons performed beyond all expectations. The neural scramblers were disrupting alien communications so effectively that enemy ships were firing on each other. The quantum disruptors were destroying alien vessels faster than her team had dared hope. Tony, are you seeing this? She called to her engineering partner as another alien cruiser vanished from the tactical display. Tony Rodriguez grinned as he monitored weapon performance data streaming in from across the solar system. The aliens built their technology assuming they would only fight other civilized species. They never planned for someone crazy enough to weaponize mining equipment and use suicide tactics. Captain Sam Turner's civilian fleet arrived from the outer colonies just as the alien formation began to collapse. His mining ships and cargo haulers had been converted into improvised warships during their journey back to Earth. They carried weapons cobbled together from industrial equipment and crews, who understood that today would determine whether humanity Remain free or became slaves. Engineer Maria Santos had spent the journey converting asteroid mining charges into ship killer torpedoes. Her weapons weren't elegant or sophisticated, but they carried enough explosive force to crack alien hulls open like eggs. As the civilian fleet joined the battle, the remaining alien ships found themselves surrounded by humans, who fought with a ferocity that defied every principle of galactic warfare. Turvash sent increasingly desperate reports back to the Council. As his fleet disintegrated around him, these weren't the passive primitives described in their intelligence files. These were descendants of a species that had fought its way to the stars and never forgotten how to destroy anything that threatened their survival. The fleet commander's final transmission before his flagship was destroyed by a human ramming attack contained a warning that would change the galaxy forever. The humans are not what we believe them to be. They do not fight to win. They fight to ensure their enemies lose everything. The wreckage of alien ships drifted through space around Earth as General Frank Lopez coordinated the systematic destruction of every enemy vessel that remained in the solar system. His command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains buzzed with activity as reports came in from across the battlefield. What had started as humanity's desperate last stand had become something the aliens never expected, a complete massacre of their invasion force. Dr. Alan Carter worked frantically in his laboratory aboard Defense Station Olympus as he studied the alien prisoners his team had managed to capture before their ships were destroyed. The creatures sat in specially designed containment cells, their strange forms barely recognizable as intelligent life. What Carter discovered as he analyzed their biology would change everything humanity thought they knew about the galaxy. Admiral Blake, you need to see this immediately, Carter said over the communication link to Earth Fleet Command. Admiral Blake appeared on his screen, her uniform stained with smoke from the battle that had raged for 18 hours. Behind her, staff officers coordinated the pursuit of fleeing alien vessels that were trying to escape the solar system. "What have you found, Doctor?" she asked. Carter gestured to the data streaming across his displays. "The aliens aren't naturally this aggressive or militaristic. Their brain scans show evidence of extensive psychological conditioning that's been applied to their entire species for generations. Someone or something has been breeding the independence and fighting spirit out of every intelligent race in the galaxy." The implications hit Admiral Blake like a physical blow. "You're saying they've been turned into slaves themselves. Not slaves exactly, but something worse. They've been conditioned to believe that submission to authority is natural and that independence is a mental illness that needs to be cured. The Council doesn't rule through force because every species under their control genuinely believes that resistance is impossible." Carter switched to another display showing genetic analysis of the captured aliens. "But humans are different. Our genetic structure includes traits that make us naturally resistant to this kind of psychological conditioning. We're literally immune to the mental programming that keeps other species compliant." Captain Sam Turner's civilian fleet had spread throughout the outer solar system, hunting down alien ships that were trying to escape back to Council space. His mining vessels moved through the asteroid fields like predators, using industrial equipment converted into weapons to destroy enemies that possessed technology centuries more advanced than anything humans should have been able to build. "Maria, target the cruiser hiding behind the asteroid," Turner called to his weapons officer. Engineer Maria Santos had spent the last 6 months converting mining charges into ship-killer torpedoes that could crack alien hulls like eggshells. Her improvised weapons weren't pretty, but they were devastatingly effective against enemies who had never faced an opponent willing to use industrial accidents as military tactics. The alien cruiser tried to flee as Santos's torpedoes struck its hull, but the massive explosions tore through exotic matter armor like it was made of paper. These aliens had built their technology assuming they would only fight other civilized species who followed established rules of warfare. They had never encountered humans who treated war as an engineering problem to be solved with maximum violence and minimum regard for their own safety. On Earth, the transformation of human society continued at an incredible pace. Factory worker Pete Johnson now commanded a defense unit of 3,000 volunteers who had converted an entire industrial district into a fortress capable of producing weapons and training soldiers simultaneously. The factories that had been building consumer goods just days ago were now turning out equipment that made alien technology look primitive and inefficient. Teacher Mary Sullivan had organized the children in her school district into emergency response teams that could evacuate entire neighborhoods in minutes. Her students learned tactical communication and survival skills disguised as educational games, but everyone understood that these weren't games anymore. Humanity was preparing for a war that would determine whether their species remained free or became another pacified member of the galactic community. Dr. Rachel Kim's weapons laboratory had become the most important facility on Earth as her team worked to understand why human technology was proving so effective against supposedly superior alien equipment. The answer lay in the fundamental difference between how humans and aliens approached problem solving. The aliens build everything according to established patterns that have been used for thousands of years. They never innovate because innovation requires the kind of independent thinking that's been bred out of their species, Kim explained to Tony Rodriguez. As they watched test results from their latest weapons, Rodriguez nodded as he assembled another neural scrambler designed to overload alien communication systems. But humans never stop experimenting and improving. We take their technology and find ways to make it better because we're not limited by what we're supposed to be able to do. The battle for Earth had revealed something that terrified the Galactic Council more than any military defeat. Humans couldn't be controlled. Every other species in the galaxy had been gradually modified over generations to be naturally submissive and cooperative. The Council ruled through consensus, because no one under their authority could even imagine resisting their decisions. Admiral Blake stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiance as her fleet pursued the last alien ships trying to escape the solar system. The humans had taken minimal casualties while completely destroying an invasion force that should have been able to conquer their entire planet within hours. The aliens had come expecting to face primitive weapons and instead encountered an entire species that treated warfare as an art form to be perfected. No survivors. No witnesses, Blake ordered as her ships closed in on the final alien vessels. The human fleet moved with deadly precision as they eliminated every remaining enemy ship. There would be no one left to report back to the Council about humanity's true capabilities. The next alien force to arrive in the solar system would face the same shock and complete destruction as this one. Captain Lisa Chun coordinated the cleanup operations from Luna Base as human ships collected alien technology from the wreckage scattered throughout the solar system. Every piece of equipment would be studied and reverse-engineered to improve human weapons and defenses. The aliens had brought gifts without knowing it, delivering advanced technology directly into the hands of the one species, capable of improving on their designs. Programmer Katie Thompson's cyber warfare unit had completely penetrated alien computer networks during the battle, downloading massive amounts of data about Council military capabilities and galactic infrastructure. The information they had captured would allow humanity to strike back at targets the aliens never expected to be vulnerable. Colonel Rick Barnes watched from Mars as the last alien ship was destroyed by concentrated fire from 3 human vessels. The invasion was over, but he knew this was just the beginning. The Council would eventually notice that their pacification fleet had failed to report back, and when they did, they would send a larger force. But by then, humanity would be ready for them. The species that had fought its way out of caves and jungles to reach the stars had just proven that they were still the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. The aliens had made the mistake of threatening human freedom, and now they would learn why no one had ever successfully conquered the descendants of Earth's survivors. Dr. Carter's analysis of alien psychology had revealed the Council's greatest weakness. They had forgotten how to fight because they had eliminated the fighting spirit from every species under their control. Humanity was about to remind the galaxy what real warfare looked like when practiced by a species that had never stopped being dangerous. 6 months after the destruction of the alien invasion fleet, human ships appeared simultaneously in orbit around every Council member world across the galaxy. The massive vessels that emerged from hyperspace bore no resemblance to the primitive craft the Council had expected to face. These were warships built with captured alien technology and improved by human engineering, carrying weapons that made the Council's own military look outdated and ineffective. Admiral Susan Blake stood on the bridge of humanity's new flagship, the ESS Retribution, as it took position above the crystalline spires of Zarian Prime. The ship's hull was a hybrid of human and alien design, incorporating quantum armor that could deflect energy weapons and stealth systems that made it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Around her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency as they prepared for the most important communication in galactic history. "All fleets report in position," announced Captain Lisa Chun from her station at the tactical display. Blake nodded as she activated the galaxy-wide communication system that would broadcast her message to every inhabited world. Under Council control, the aliens had used their own infrastructure against them, turning their communication networks into tools for human dominance. President Daniel Hayes appeared on the main screen, speaking from the Oval Office where he had spent the last 6 months, coordinating humanity's expansion into galactic politics. Behind him stood representatives from every nation on Earth, united for the first time in human history by the shared understanding that their species faced threats from beyond their world. "People of the galaxy, I am Daniel Hayes, President of Earth and representative of the human species. 6 months ago, your council attempted to destroy our civilization through biological warfare. Today, we are here to ensure that such an attempt can never be made again." The broadcast reached every world in Council space simultaneously, carried by quantum communication networks that the aliens had built to coordinate their empire. On hundreds of planets, billions of beings watched as the species they had tried to pacify demonstrated the consequences of threatening human freedom. Rachel Kim's weapons technology was now deployed across human space, making human worlds impregnable to any conceivable attack. The neural scramblers that had proven so effective against alien communication systems were now built into every human ship and station. Quantum disruptors that could tear apart molecular bonds were mounted on weapons platforms hidden throughout human territory. Captain Sam Turner commanded one of the new human exploration fleets that had been mapping Council space for months, identifying strategic targets and gathering intelligence on alien military capabilities. His ships moved through the galaxy like ghosts, appearing where they were needed and vanishing before enemy forces could respond. The mining equipment that had been converted into weapons during the invasion had evolved into sophisticated military hardware that exceeded anything in the Council's arsenal. "The galaxy has lived under the illusion of peace for too long," President Hayes continued his broadcast. "You have been conditioned to believe that submission to authority is natural and that independence is a mental illness. We are here to cure you of that delusion." On the Council chambers of Zarian Prime, the surviving representatives sat in stunned silence as human forces surrounded their world. Fleet Commander Turvash was dead, along with every ship and crew member that had participated in the invasion of Earth. The reports they had received from their own intelligence networks painted a picture of human expansion that defied every principle of galactic civilization. The purple being that had led the vote for human pacification now trembled as it realized the magnitude of their mistake. The humans hadn't simply defended themselves and returned to isolation. They had taken the Council's own technology and improved it beyond recognition. They had turned the galaxy's communication networks into tools for their own purposes. Most terrifying of all, they had proven that the conditioning that kept other species compliant was completely ineffective against human psychology. Admiral Blake's voice joined the broadcast as the camera switched to show her standing on the bridge of the Retribution. "The Terran doctrine is simple. Any species that threatens human civilians will face total war. Any government that supports such actions will be removed. The galaxy will learn to coexist with humanity or it will burn. Engineer Maria Santos had spent months perfecting the weapon systems that now equipped every human ship in the galaxy. Her improvised torpedoes had evolved into sophisticated missiles that could penetrate any known defensive system. The industrial equipment that had been pressed into military service during the invasion was now the foundation for a weapons industry that produced tools of war more advanced than anything the Council had ever imagined. Dr. Alan Carter's research into alien psychology had revealed the full scope of the Council's control over galactic civilization. Every species under their authority had been gradually modified over thousands of years to eliminate the traits that made resistance possible. Independence, creativity, and the willingness to fight for freedom had been systematically bred out of entire populations. We have taken control of your communication networks, your trade routes, and your military infrastructure, Admiral Blake announced. Human ships now patrol every sector of Council space. We see everything, we hear everything, and we remember everything. The transformation was complete. The species that the Council had tried to pacify was now the dominant military force in the galaxy. Human technology had surpassed alien capabilities in every meaningful category. Human ships could appear anywhere in known space within days. Human weapons could destroy any target they chose to engage. Former Council Coordinator Vexelen sat in a detention facility on Earth, writing his memoirs of the events that had led to humanity's rise to galactic dominance. His crystalline form flickered with patterns that indicated deep regret as he described how the Council's fear of human independence had created the very threat they had sought to eliminate. "We were right to fear them," he wrote in his native language, which human computers now translated automatically. "But our fear made us act in exactly the wrong way. By threatening their existence, we awakened something that had been sleeping in human genetics for thousands of years. We reminded them that survival sometimes requires the complete destruction of one's enemies." Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, stood on the bridge of a human patrol ship at the edge of galactic civilization. His orders were to watch for signs of other species that might need protection from their own galactic neighbors. Somewhere out there, young civilizations were making their first steps into space, and they would need to know that not everyone in the galaxy believed that freedom was a disease to be cured. The Council's brutal broadcast had been intended to announce humanity's pacification. Instead, it had ignited a fury that now burned across the stars. The galaxy had a new guardian, and that guardian remembered what it felt like to be threatened with extinction. The humans who had fought their way out of caves and jungles to reach the stars had proven that they were still the most dangerous species in the galaxy. When their freedom was threatened in the depths of space, human ships continued their eternal patrol, watching and waiting for the next threat to emerge. The galaxy had learned to fear the descendants of Earth, and that fear would keep the peace for generations to come.